All right, folks, welcome back to part 2 on the contraption. We're going to pick up right where we left off. We're going to get the cylinder head off. Getting the cams and the rockers and stuff off on this, it turns out it's very similar to an XS11. The cam chain is actually fairly tight around the sprocket, and you have to separate the sprocket from the cam itself. Otherwise, it won't come off the gear, in other words. So that was very similar to an XS11. And you can actually bar this thing around a little bit with the tensioner out because it's so tight. You know, it's not as loose as like a KZ1000 or a GPZ or something. That works out because the way the instructions say, you got to take the bolts out of the cam sprocket, slide the sprocket over like I did on that XS if you watch that video, and then you can take the whole thing out. Well, the problem with it is you can't get at the lower one when this is set in the right position. The way they want this set up is with the cam having the keyway sitting upwards, like a line that goes across to the surface of this cam end on number 4. And so that's how I set it up. Originally I screwed it up and put it down, and that was number 1 top dead center. So 180 degrees on the cam is 360 on the crank. Now it's at number 4 top dead center. So that was kind of interesting. And that again is just like the XS11. Concourse 14 is the same way too. When I took cams out of that, do the valve clearance, I set it up on number 4 TDC, which is kind of cool. So this is all pretty simple, pretty easy. In fact, I kind of like this setup because once you get the rockers out, the cam just comes right out and there's no pressure on it from valve springs. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to set you up and film any of this part because, you know, I've never done one of these before. I'm going to take it slow. I got to take the exhaust off still, obviously. That's real hard. And then we'll take a look at what we got underneath there. Camshaft holders off. You just hit them with a dead blow lightly and they come right out. You got a couple of pins, a couple of O-rings, and the pins are not coming out right now, but I'll take them out another time once the head is off. By the way, we were missing a pin on the head cover. That's the big thing down in there. This missing pin theme through this entire engine, I don't know who the hell worked on this, but I don't know, maybe they collected them, made costume jewelry out of them or something. I mean, who knows? People are weird. Got the exhaust off. You know, I mentioned the cam sprocket before. These were the... Try that again. These were the bolts that were holding the cam sprocket to the cam. They're just grade 8.8 hardware store bolts. M8, I'm assuming, by 125 pitch. Absolutely, positively incorrect. Yeah, these are most definitely going to get replaced with the proper bolt. Those are supposed to be high strength, like case hardened bolts. And I think they have a little shoulder on them too. These are absolutely wrong. So I have something else pretty cool I want to show you in regards to the service data. When I take these apart on other bikes, there's no loosening sequence for the cylinder head fasteners, whether they're bolts, nuts. All I do is reverse the order of tightening. In this service manual, it says specifically to reverse the order of tightening. So that's kind of cool. And they give you an order of tightening on page 37, figure 3-38. This is a K4 manual. I do have the supplements, but I glanced through them. There's really no difference. And according to this, on the engine cases past this number, which this one is, it has some other rubbers and collars and stuff between the cylinder head and the cylinder block, which we'll look at when we take it off. I wanted to expound on this a little bit from what I recently learned because, you know, I'm no expert on CB750. So I found a really good site. It's called Cycle X. They're located in Hazelhurst, Wisconsin. I'll put the link to their website right here. Anyway, from what I read on their website, they were kind enough to explain what these are for. These are for the weeping oil situations on these old Honda CB750s from the original all the way up to the later. Okay, so here's a picture from their website of the original. Those holes at the bottom with the arrows are the oil feed, and the arrows at the top are the oil return. And you can see how small the holes are. That was the original weeping oil area. There's actually quite a few more, but these are the ones we're concentrating on for this discussion. So the next picture, you can see that this is the modification Honda made. This goes around those cylinder bolts with those collars and some O-rings to help seal that off. So the final picture is one of those collars that the O-rings go on sitting in the counterbore on the cylinder block. And they bring up a point I hadn't thought of. Sometimes those collars are apparently too tall or too thick, if you will, as far as the height goes. And you got to check that in comparison to the counterbore, the cylinder head thickness, and make sure that they're not too tall so they're actually holding the cylinder head up a little bit. So net sum here, what those collars and O-rings are for is to try to mitigate oil leakage or seepage that Honda knew about, and they were trying to mitigate it through the generation of the engine development and models. So I want to thank Cyclex for putting all that information up on their website. Again, here's the link. They look like they have some really cool stuff. Go check them out if you want to build up your CB750. I'm waiting to take this off to order a top end kit. Done this before where I've prematurely, I hate it when I'm premature, ordered top end kit, and then it turns out to be that somebody's boarded out and it's the wrong size. We're going to evaluate that once the head's off. This is the other interesting part. Remember I said when this thing is set up where the proper cam timing, it's at number 4 top dead center. If you look under C here, assemble the cam chain on the sprocket before mounting the cam sprocket and place the camshaft on the top of the camshaft holder, etc., etc., and align the timing index line on the right side of the camshaft so it's parallel with the holder and the key groove is facing up. In this condition, the base circle of the number 4 cam is toward the top and the number 1 cam is in the overlap position. Now with the base circle of the cam on the top, on number 4, seeing it has the rockers on the top, that's top dead center, because that would be both valves are closed with the base circle. That would be where you do the clearance. So we are most definitely going to put this back in like I took it apart, where it's set on 1 and 4 down there, and the base circle's up on number 4, and then we'll know we're in the proper cam timing. So I'm just kind of reading ahead and making my plan as far as how to do this. There's another tensioner arm deal down inside there too. And usually what they do is they sit down at recesses on the top of the cylinder block, and then that's what holds them in. Sometimes little dampeners on top of them. So when I take this off, I'm going to make sure I'm really careful about that so nothing falls into the cam chain tunnel. Now, of course, I'm always a day late and a dollar short. I should have mentioned this earlier. I am well aware that if this was a regular CB750, we wouldn't be able to take the cylinder head off in situ. We'd have to pull the motor. But we got tons of clearance. I measured it last night. And from the bottom of the head mating surface with the cylinder block to the top of one of these studs is 80 mils. So I don't see any problem with getting this thing off in situ. I don't think we're going to have any issue because that spine is way, way up there. All right, you want the good news or the bad news first? The good news is these pistons have been replaced. That one looks brand new because it wasn't firing because of our compression issue. And even number 1 over there, because these are companion, remember, 4 and 1, 1 and 4. Just a little carbon on the top of it, those will clean up fine. These are your bores. I don't know if this light is going to cooperate here, but I'll show it to you. Yeah, see if I can zoom up a little bit more. They don't look so good. Like, the prep work's terrible on these. They really are. So I'm assuming, you'd have to assume at this point, somebody put new pistons and new rings in here. Because those are definitely new. Probably aftermarket, that's fine. So I guess that's sort of the good news. The bad news is the cam chain guide on the front side of the motor is cracked right there. Yeah, see the crack? Now in a lot of these engines, like, you know, the Kawasaki's and stuff, you can take these out. It's actually sandwiched in between the cylinder head and the cylinder block. And usually a couple little dampers right there, but that's not the case on this one. This one is actually affixed between the cylinder block and the crankcase. And this tensioner, the roller tensioner, doesn't look good either. It's all chewed up and it is not in nice shape. It's not happy, in other words. And likewise, we have a situation where that can't be removed without a cylinder block removal. So that's what we're going to end up having to do. We're going to have to pull the cylinder block as well. I'm going to order a top-end kit that comes with piston rings. The one I was looking at from 4in1.com comes with rings. This is future me from the editing cave. Now, that was good foresighting to get those rings and order them ahead of time, because we're going to need them ultimately. So go ahead and take a guess right now why you think we're going to need them. And we're going to re-ring it, and we'll re-hone these bores. That means we'll do some precision measure everything when we take this apart. You know, it's going to go back together no matter what, whatever the sizes are. It's not that I don't care, but it is what it is. This is stock boring according to the service manual, 61 millimeters. Last time I looked, that looks like 61 to me. So we are talking about a stock bore. That way I know what to order. So 61 millimeters, we're good. All this stuff is plentiful in the aftermarket as far as these, I think they are at least, these tensioners. Well, this most definitely has got to be replaced. You might be able to live with that, but I wouldn't. Most definitely this. It's cracked. So, yeah. And I know the top end kit comes with all these O-rings. The manual talks about those, go where they go, so it's no big deal. I'll snap a few pictures. One of them just came out with the cylinder head. Oh, let me show you the head here in a second. Yeah. They had all those in there. This is for the oiling, like on the KZs, 1000s. It comes up the end ones, goes back down, and goes down through the cam chain tunnel. These just come up through the center studs, I guess. And here's your main oil gallery. Kind of gives you an idea, just like the KZ1000. So it must connect right here. You can kind of see that. Provides oil pressure to the cylinder head. Wasn't hard at all to get this off. I'm hoping, since somebody's had this off before, I'm hoping that the block's not going to be all that difficult either. The manual talks about some special tools or something necessary to remove this block. Like to get some sort of fasteners out. I have no freaking clue what they're talking about. This thing should just pop right up, but I'll do a little bit more research. Let's go look at the head. Here's our main culprit, number 4 exhaust valve. You can see just the way that looks. See how it's proud of the seat? I bet you that valve is bent. That's flush. That's flush. That don't look so good either on number 1. Remember I said that we had a cap that had a dent in it. Now I don't know if that would cause this. I don't remember what position that was in. I said originally, or not originally, I said it might be a number 4 now, because I took them all off and put them back on to do the clearance, but that's not where it was. I don't really remember where it was. And where's the other damn pin? Oh, there it is. If this was missing main cylinder locating pins in the block, I'm going to have a little conniption. So one's there, one's there. We're okay. You're okay. I'm okay. We're all okay. That's not okay. Now, I can't help myself. I'm going to go ahead and set you up. Let's pull number 4 valve out. These are so easy to do because they're above the cylinder head instead of recessed like a KZ, which is a real prick. We'll get my valve compressor tool out. I can usually find the dome, the concave feature of the valve with the bottom of this thing, get it lined right up. Done this a lot of times. Let me go get a magnet, as Chad from This and That Garage would say. Let me get a magnet. I watch everything he puts up. He is just absolutely fantastic. Jeepers creepers, there's your freaking keepers. Everybody probably wonders why I keep all these bags up here from McMaster Car. That's the reason. They're great bags. We bag everything up when we take it apart. And each one of these will get bagged up individually. Come on, you. Tight over that valve stem. So that goes up. Remember that. Oh, I don't know if it does or not. That's the way they had it. We'll go ahead and put it in here. I'll have to relabel this number 4 exhaust, obviously. We'll take that off later. That valve is bent. I can tell you right now that valve is bent. Well, there's your problem, lady. They put it in a drill. Shit, we got machine tools. Put it over in a lathe. Look at that. You think so? Let's put it down to like 70 RPM. Come on. Yeah, you think that's a wee bit bent? One of these days I'm going to pull the top off this thing up here again. I've done it once before. We're going to get in here and take some closer looks at stuff in running condition, like these slow RPMs. See what the hell's making all that noise. False alarm, there's nothing wrong with it. The damn grub screws loosened up and the pulley was coming off the damn shaft, so I fixed that and it's perfect now. But I digress. Yeah, we got a big time bent valve here, which is what I was kind of thinking. Why is the question. The answer to that is I don't know. We can hypothesize all we want. I'm not going to do it right now because I want to tear into this a little further. And then I will come up with a theory for you. But there's the only place it was actually hitting. You can see the wet spot, the shiny spot. No wonder it didn't have any compression on number 4. All right, folks, no hypothesis here. I found the direct evidence, and you can kind of see it right there. You see that mark in the valve relief as far as on the piston on the exhaust side? Well, you know, I just kind of happen to have a valve here, so we can kind of match that up, can't we? Yep. Cinderella, there's your slippers. I see no evidence of any such impact on the other 3 cylinders. I got to pull all the valves out anyway, though, and do a parts order rather. Now, why did this happen? My guess is that somebody set this on 1 and 4 like it's supposed to, and then decided that they were going to do it with the number 1 valve at top dead center, not number 4. Remember, it says right in the manual that the base circle for the number 4 valve is pointing up. And since we have those rockers, that means that is in a position where the exhaust valve and the intake valve are both closed, ergo top dead center in this case, because we're right there on TDC right now. So I'm wondering if they simply set it for the wrong setting. I don't know where they set it, and then went to bar the motor over and smacked the valve. Now, I've done this before on a car motor, on a Toyota Supra turbo engine, to be exact, on a Mark III, where I set the damn timing up wrong after I did a total top end job and bottom end on this engine, barred it around and smacked a valve. Had to take the whole top end of the head apart again and go to a machine shop, and they did the new valve stuff for me to replace the ones I bent. I empathize with whomever did this, but I've never done it on a bike, nor do I ever intend on doing that. But there's your problem, lady. She's a banana, so there you go. All right, here's number 1 exhaust. That sucker's bent too. Which makes perfect sense, because 1 and 4 companion cylinders. A little detective work on number 1 on the exhaust side where that relief is for the valves. You can see the mark. All right, Cinderella, there's your other shoe.
It's a damn slipper.
So I had to wipe off this carbon to get at that, obviously, to see it. So this is not a new occurrence. What does that tell us? It tells me, at least, that the theory that I came up with originally, that somebody put this back together and timed it wrong, barred it over, smacked the number 1 and number 4 valves. So far, any other valves except 1 and 4 exhausts are not bent. They're nice and straight. Now, some of them are kind of mushroomed out on the tip there, on the end. Let's get down here on that tip right there that goes through from the top. That's where the rocker hits it. And I had to stone these off before I pulled them through the valve guides. And that's because of the loose valve clearance and those rockers smacking against these instead of just, you know, pushing on them. I don't think that's a deal breaker for these valves. I mean, can't replace everything. It's just not in the budget. So we're going to reuse what we can. Here's the tip of number 1 intake valve. What the hell is up with that? I checked the rocker. The rocker looks fine. And so, yeah. Now, oh, you know what I think that is? Haha. Hang on. A little more detective work for your pleasure. For yours and her pleasure. So here is that. I want to show you the tip of that valve again. This is, of course, at the tappet end, or the stem and nut end, as the case may be. You see how it's got a recessed area and a narrower area, which is kind of counterintuitive. It should be kind of flattened out and mushroomed, which it was as well, but not for the typical reason. We have just identified the valve that had the cap with the dented inside of it from a stem and nut backing off and hitting the inside of it. Probably like this, actually. I'll kind of mimic that. I'll show you the cap too here in a second. And backed off. Now look what happens when you go to fit this into that. It fits perfectly. So this was smacking down on this without the stem, the tappet coming down on top of it, the adjustable. I just call it the stem and nut. So the stem was backed off inside the rocker. Rocker was coming down smacking on this, causing that kind of almost like forging that ring around it, that narrowed center section. And this is harder than that, said the wife. So there's your answer. Now I'll go show you that cap. Here's that cap. This is the only one like it. And so probably not the nut. I thought there was well, there's a little bit of a nut imprint in there as well, but that's mainly the top of the stem that backed off. So it smacked the cap and backed off enough to do the damage to the valve. We're going to replace these. I think we're going to replace all the valves. They all have a certain amount of problems. We already have 2 out of the 2 out of the 8 rather. 6, yeah, 3-cylinder. 2 out of the 8 that are bent. And so if I replace 1 or 2 other valves, I mean, we're already at 50% of all the valves. There's only 8 in the engine. So we might as well just replace them all. That saves any valve face work because they'll all be done already at the appropriate angles. And all we got to do is the seats, which I have a knee-way kit for. Bada bing, bada boom. So a little detective work, but that's where this came from, and that is where this came from. Number 1, intake. The 77 and 78 engines are different than the earlier or the later CB750s, and I'm having a hard time finding these valves brand new. So the only choice I had was to go with a used set off eBay. Hopefully between the original valves and this replacement set, we should be able to come up with 8 good valves. And in case anybody's wondering, yes, I did secure these 2 oil jets. One goes in here and one goes in there. All right, just about quitting time on a Friday. I got to cover this sucker up. This is already done. Parts are organized. Parts are all covered up. I need to make a list of shit to order, which I will do in here momentarily. Yeah, it's pretty cool head to work on. It's a lot easier than the Kawasaki's, actually. And, you know, single cam, obviously, you know. But we did some detective work and found out what happened. And so since we're taking a block off, we'll do some honing. We'll put new rings on it. Not even take the pistons out. Just put the rings on in situ unless there's a problem in the connecting rod bushes, which I can't really do anything about anyway without doing a crankcase. Split, which ain't happening. So we'll get all this crap replaced and then be able to put it back together. So this is a project that's going to go on for a while. So I'll put these clips into the queue for editing, and then we'll catch on the next ones. All right, folks, just like video 1, it'll be a little bouncing around back and forth. I'm waiting on parts for the engine side of it, top end and so forth. I just got them ordered yesterday, so it's going to be a while. There's still other things to do, and we got to button up this rear tire deal with the brake. Now, these are the EBC 230s. I think it was 230s, and the 231s were the ones that I ordered in error. They're just about 40 mil wide, and they fit perfectly. I've already tried them in the drum, but just to show you this part, 178 and a half, let's say. So they work, and I think this will solve the brake problem, but I am going to put a little spacer in here between this brake panel and the wheel itself. I'll kind of show you my logic on that real quick. This brake panel has evidence of it rubbing in here, like it's a little bit too close, because like I said in video 1, I have no idea what the hell this wheel is from. And you can also see that it's biased toward the inside. This outside edge has got rust, and all the way up on the inside ain't got no rust. So we're going to bump it out a couple of mil. I already found a kind of a precision flat washer without any modification, fits perfect. I'll put a dab of grease on it just to hold it in place, then I'll slide the thing all together. That'll bump this out about 2 mil. I think that'll be perfect. We got plenty of room on this side to play with as far as having a little bit more extension. Drop in a bucket. So I'm going to get the rear wheel put back on the bike, and we'll take a look at the final product. Well, I'm not sure. I did have the brake hooked up, and I tried it out that way, you know, the brake lever. And, you know, you can put a lot of leverage on it as opposed to just pulling this. And it seems like it's really grabbing again. But I want to show you the main differences. Now, if you recall, when we moved this lever with the old shoes in and installed in the wheel, this lever would move 1.5 inches, something like that. I mean, it really moved a lot. This is how far it moves now before it stops. So that's because the shoes are much closer to the drum diameter, which is what I thought would be the appropriate fix for this. Not 100% sure though. I mean, when I just hold it with this, you can get it pretty tight, but you can still turn it. If I hook up the lever though, I mean, I can lock this right up. But we're not rolling down the road with the inertia and the forces that the weight of the machine at speed, you know, would put on this rear brake either, you know. But obviously the wheel is not correct for a Honda brake panel. It's not a Honda wheel. I'm 100% sure of that because there's no indication of it, no numbering. I'm 100% sure this is, because now the Honda brake shoes have fit 2 out of 3 sets at least. It's just, there must be a relationship issue with the diameters. Maybe the surface finish. I don't know. The engineering's different. Who knows? But this thing sure as hell seems like it wants to bind this thing up again. I don't know. I just get a gut feeling that these are going to be too much. So I think plan A is going to be, we're going to leave it alone. And then once we get the engine sorted out and he can test ride it, if it does the same thing again, we're going to have to go over, switch over to those narrower CB550 shoes. And maybe that'll solve it. Maybe there's just too much grip on these wider shoes with this setup because it's, you know, basically garbage, assembling garbage. I'm calling it the puzzle from hell. You know, it really is like a puzzle from hell.
The puzzle from hell.
And with this mismatch, maybe those narrower shoes will solve the problem. I don't know. We'll have to try it. There's really no way to determine right now whether this is going to work or not. So this part's going to be just put on hold. We got a lot of other stuff to do. We'll just revisit this in the future as necessary. So it's time to get to the point now where we got to pull the cylinder block off. I still haven't done that off the engine yet. All right, service manual says cover it up like this. Say a few specific magical words, which I've already done off camera. Pull the cover off and the cylinder block will magically be removed automatically. Like I said, it's magic. Ready? Well, shit, that didn't work. Actually, with all the bolts out of it, it should just come up. Actually, I got to wipe some of the crap off on the back here that's really, really close to that edge. And I tell you what, it's almost like somebody ran this son of a gun down a beach or something. You know, it's like got garbage all over it. I got a plastic wedge underneath the other side. That's just teeter-totter, you know. Well, nobody can say that the rings aren't sticking. In other words, they're not seized up in the pistons. Okay, let's reevaluate. 2 and 3 are free and clear to navigate. Almost lost a pin in the crankcase. Hang on. That'd be bad. Ta-da! That should come up now. That's busted down there too. I wonder where the piece went. Great. Come on, baby. Yeah, that piece might be down in there. We'll have to fish that out somehow. All right, number 1 is clear. And all of them are clear. I'm going to look for that piece. The other side of that. I found it. It's right there, so I'll pick it out. Hopefully there's no other pieces of it, but it looks like it's a whole piece. It's like that game Operation. You remember that game as a kid? Operation! Got it. You know, you can't touch the sides, or otherwise it goes zzz. I'd say she's a wee bit brittle. These are available aftermarket. The only place I could find these was a place called VintageCB750.com. And they're not terribly expensive either. And so that's coming. I had to order parts from 3 different sources to get what I needed for this job. And this was one of the 3. I got some other stuff from them as well. There's supposed to be some rubber dampers or something on top of this. I think it's on top of, it may be underneath this gasket here for the pin that goes across to hold this tensioner in. So I'm going to be extra careful about that. I'll try to get the gasket out of the way first so I can look at that. And I was able to find this tensioner. I think this one came from 4into1.com, if I'm not mistaken, along with the top end gasket set and piston rings. The set comes with rings. Yeah, we're going to throw rings in it because why not? The never-ending air compressor. You just got to love it. This is that vacuum tool. It's a SX1000. That's what I mentioned in my toolbox tour video. This is the application in which I use this almost exclusively because it's perfect for reaching in here and picking up shit before I disturb that gasket. There's a bunch of garbage and trash and little rocks and assorted sundries and flotsam and jetsam. It does a good job of it too. It's loud as hell though, so I really should have my ear protection in. It mainly comes in handy when you're scraping these gaskets. This one's coming off though, no problem, which, you know, we would expect because somebody's been in here not too long ago. And so I think we're going to have a relatively easy time when it comes to gasket surface preparation, but you never know. Oh, I wanted to clarify this pin thing on the guide. Now this typically wouldn't be a problem with it falling down into the motor when you take this out. Technically you have to wait for the cylinder block to be removed and then take this out, you know, because this goes across. But obviously since this thing was busted, and you can see this part up here is the part we could see from the top, which is likewise busted. This just fell over to the side. So I guess it's just something to keep in mind if you're taking one of these apart. All right, so here's a new one that I have not ever seen that I got to show you. Let me see if I can snake this sucker in here. Now look down right there on the base gasket. You see that little piece? That'd be right there next to number 3. Now what does that look like to you? To me it looks like a piece of a piston ring. So I look at number 3 and I'm looking at that second compression ring. There's one end of it and there's the other. Now I don't know about you, but that ring gap looks a little bit wide to me. So what happened? Well, obviously when they went to install these, they broke a piston ring, didn't either realize it or didn't care. A piece of it flew over here, got embedded into that gasket, which I'm going to pop out and scrape out and get that before I move this at all. Because I don't want any more of it, and I mean more of it because that's not this width here. Well, it could be because the ring is not compressed. But it's difficult to tell. I still think that even with the ring compressed, there's more to it than just that. So I would say that there's a possibility that down inside there's a piece of that piston ring. It may have already been chewed up by something. It may have done internal damage. That's a really, really bad thing to happen. Yeah, so, anyway, let me get this stuff cleaned up and then get this. I'll probably just pull the whole base gasket off at that point since it's so loose so we can get these guys out from in here, this side and this side for this guy. The tensioner roller, that thing, whatever this is called, the arm, tensioner roller arm. Well, the rubber bumpers, whoa. The rubber biscuits are most definitely used. They're pretty hard. Yeah. They just slip into the ends of these guys and line up to the flats. I ordered a new one of these lower rollers as well because I figured it's chewed up. Oh, there's an alignment tang on here which is giving me some trouble on the inside of this. I know what that is. It's an anti-rotational tang on this inner bushing on this to keep it from spinning. You know, you guys could have said something. That anti-rotational notch is right there. It was on your side. I just couldn't see it. So that part of it just lines up to that slot to keep it from turning in there. So this thing spins on the bush instead of the whole thing spinning. But it is kind of tore up, as I said. So we are definitely going to replace it. And again, this whole thing is getting replaced because that is obviously non-replaceable. It's riveted in. All right, folks, I need to go fishing now. So I'll be back later. Not that kind of fishing. I'm going to go in there and go fishing for that busted remaining piece of the piston ring. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to bar it over to get number 3 piston up, which is fine. You can do that on these. You just keep tension on the cam chain so it doesn't bind up. And then we'll get in there with a magnet and see if we can find some. I'll let you know. What do you want? Huh? Do you know where that piston ring is? He doesn't know. Let's get back to our regular dumbass programming now. Well, I don't see nothing. Actually, it looks pretty good down in there. So I think I'm going to end up pulling the sump off. We'll do that all off camera later on in this job. Because I'm going to have to go in there and look. I doubt it's in the oil filter. It's probably too big. Or those pieces got, chewed up, and that's the metal we were seeing in the other side of the motor. I don't know. Either way, it is not good. Not good at all. Let me get some gloves back on because this is all full of schmoo. My intention is not to take the pistons off the connecting rods unless there's a reason for it. If they're not wobbling around side to side this way, doing that, then they're staying. But for now, I'm going to go get some paper towels and pack this up with paper towels to keep, crap from falling into it. And we'll revisit this at a later time. And we'll figure out where those pieces went, hopefully, at some point. All right, all the tampons are installed. And I checked 1, 2, and 4 piston rings. They're all good. It's only number 3 on that second ring. All right, it's forensic analysis time. And so here are the 2 bits of the piston ring that I dug out of that base gasket. And you can see they span basically 2 of these blocks on this grid paper. It's graph paper. I also removed the broken ring from number 3 piston. That's the second ring. And it's just a matter of good practice. I stoned the sharp edges of that broken edge in particular on this piston ring before I put it into the bore. I don't have a pair of regular traditional calipers small enough. All my stuff is too big. So I'm using these guys. I don't remember where I got them from, but I figured I'd use them once in a lifetime, and now we're using them. Right at the edge on the inside of this radius, this diameter, well, it would be a radius if we're only considering part of it. These little calipers fit just inside there. So now we have somewhat of a measurement, of what that is, just kind of like that. Okay, so with our graph paper as the standard, we put this across there. This would be at the narrowest part, actually, so we'll go this way. You can see that pretty much matches up 100%. What that tells us is that there are no other pieces. If they are, they're microscopic, shattering pieces because this is so brittle. But in my experience with piston rings, and I have broken one or possibly more in the past, they break off in whole sections, usually not even 2 little pieces like this. In this scenario, as far as installing rings and you catch it the wrong way and snap. So this pretty much proves that we're probably not going to find any more pieces of this laying in there, because we have this length matched up with the 2 pieces. Now I have this piece set up where the breaks in the piece are quite obvious. In other words, they match. The crack matches. This side of it over here is the flat side on the end of the piston ring. This would be where the ring gap would be measured to the other side of the ring. This side is rough, so that's the part that it broke off. And of course in the middle too. We're looking at what broke out of that ring, and I'm pretty confident that there shall be no other pieces. So this is a good way to determine something like this, since somebody was kind enough to provide the broken pieces conveniently embedded in the base gasket underneath the cylinder between the block. All right, it's time to check some bores with the dial bore gauge, which is already set to the nominal cylinder bore diameter, 61.01 to 61.02 millimeters, or 2.402 to 2.402 and a half imperial, which is what my tools are. This is number 1. I mean, she's like actually slightly smaller than that. Probably some of the varnish that's in here. A couple of tenths. That's pretty much dead nuts. Pretty much dead nuts. Now you can't see this one because I got to go sideways, but dead nuts. Pretty much just about the same as the middle, a little bit under. About 3/4 of a thou small. So again, that's probably just some varnish or something in here. So again, that's the nominal size. I set it with a 3 to 4 inch Starrett mic. This one right here, in fact, and I checked it with the standard first. Right there, 402.5. I'm going to go ahead and double check the bore gauge just to make sure I didn't screw something up, because I have a tendency to do that sometimes. No, we're dead nuts. Let's do number 2. Yeah, it's like a maybe 3/10, even on a small side. That's dead nuts. Dead nuts. Good. 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 If there was a taper, the taper minimum, or maximum as I should say, are 2 thou basically. And we don't even have a few tenths. And again, that might be some crud on the inside of the surface. Here's number 3. Beauty. Beauty. These things are round and no taper and to size, which is amazing. That's the first time that's ever happened. Here's number 4. Nice. 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 Yeah, I mean, it's reading technically a little small by about 1 thou and 2/10 maybe. Could be shmoo on there. Pretty slick. These suckers are definitely within standard as far as diameter and taper and out of roundness goes. I mean, they're about the best set of clapped out motorcycle cylinder bores I've ever seen. So, hey, not bad. I measure the piston diameter on 2 and 3 because they're the ones that are up and accessible. And so the standard is 2.4002 to 2.4009. And we've got 2.4005 on those 2 pistons. And so I would assume that the other 2 would be the same. I'll have to check them off camera later because they're all brand new. So the pistons and the bores are within spec, which again is a pleasant surprise. Okay, so our piston diameter is 2.4005. Our bore diameter is standard 2.4002. Actually, both of these are standard. Subtract the 2 of them, you get 0.0015 or 1.5 thou. The maximum dimension for oil clearance or piston to bore clearance is 0.0016. So what we're going to end up doing, of course, is when I run that ball hone through and take that varnish off and crap inside there, this is going to change slightly to the higher side as far as this goes. Because our bore diameter is probably going to go up by a couple of tenths, because the range of that 0.0004, that's 4/10 to 0.0016. So in other words, you can have just 4/10 worth of clearance on these guys, which I wouldn't do in this situation, because I don't know what pistons these are. Are they those high silicon content pistons that do not expand under heat? Or are they some cheap crap pistons, that do, the forged ones? So I would definitely want to go towards the maximum side or the normal side of the piston to bore clearance for sure. And that's where it's going to take us when I run that ball hone through to dress up these cylinder bores. So that's pretty cool. So we are really within spec. Like I said, I'm really surprised. This is the first clapped out engine top end I've ever done that's even come close to being within nominal as far as all the specs go. All right, so the majority of the rest of this is all going to be done off camera. I've got to remove rings, I've got to check the other 2 pistons and clean the piston tops, and then clean the cylinder head up, and then clean the cylinder bore up. But I will bring you back when I go and do some head work, but I can't do that until I get the new valves in. I'll just kind of bring you up to date with everything at that time instead of going piecemeal and bouncing around.